Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. I am your host, Kaleesha Washington, your parenting BFF. And if you are a parent, you need to stop scrolling and listen to this because we're about to get into something that is very serious that happens to way too many families. And we're talking about sexual assault, we're talking about molestation. And we're hearing it all in the news right now. This is not about what's in the news. This is not about people that we don't know about. This is about what's happening in our own families. And I'm super excited to bring to the front my sister, this is Larissa Rhone. She is an empowerment coach, a survivor empowerment coach who teaches and helps people get through their problems associated with sexual assault and trauma. And so I'm super excited to have her on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Kaleesha.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And thank you for having me. I have to say, I love the name of your podcast. I don't
Thank
know how you
you.
came up with it, but this is a pod. You hear the name and you want to stop and listen. So I love it.
Thank you.
You're
So I
welcome.
know you speak from lived experience. Tell people about yourself and what led you to this line of work.
Whew. Okay. Let me see how quickly I can get through this. So I am what you would refer to as a third generation sexual assault survivor. Right. And by that, I mean, huh, I am a survivor at the hands of my grandmother's husband. My mother is a survivor at the hands of her mother's husband. And my grandmother is a survivor at the hands of her husband. So not only it didn't stop there, he went through the entire family. So as I just mentioned, well, let me give you some backstory. My grandmother met this man, married him, brought him home, and she already had a few children. And so he's not my biological grandfather. However, he's been in my mother's life since she was 6 years old. And when my grandmother met him, initially he raped her. She still married him and brought him home. And so he had access to all her daughters. My mother was 6 at the time when he came into her life. Her violation started at 6 years old, and it progressed on and continued until she was 16. My abuse began when I was 5. Mind you, I knew nothing about any of that. I was 5 years old. I had to stay over at my grandmother's one night. One night. It took one night. My parents were out of town. Prior to that, I was never allowed to go to the home. And they went out of town, got stuck because, transportation will do what transportation do. It broke down. They never got home, and that one night at my grandmother's, he struck, and it happened then at 5. And let me just preface this by saying there's a difference between molestation and rape. What happened at 5, I was first molested, right? And that includes the fondling, the kissing, and just inappropriate touching and all of that. However, my parents migrated. I'm the eldest of 6. 5 were born in Jamaica. And my parents migrated when I was 10 years old. And to my mom's credit, she didn't leave me at my grandmother's because the day that she came and picked me up, I told her what had happened. Unfortunately, I didn't know then. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I found out that my mom was also a survivor of his. But at 5, even though he threatened me not to speak and all of those things, when she came and got me that morning, I told her exactly what happened. I remember specifically her pulling my undies down, checking me to see if there was any type of insertion. She pulled my undies back up and she told me not to say anything. And what do you do at 5 years old? You don't say anything.
Yeah.
And so when they migrated at 10, she didn't leave me there initially. She left me with some family and my siblings. We were all split up all over the place, long story. And eventually my grandmother came, took me back from where my mother had initially left me and brought me to my aunts who knew what had happened prior still allowed my sister and I to keep going to the house. And eventually, at from age 10, and then eventually at 11, I ended up having to go to the house frequently until I ended up back there. So from age 11 until I was 16, the
Wow.
rape, he started raping me repeatedly. And it never stopped there because when I was 13, I caught him with my 3-year-old sister. And again, as I said, it's an extremely long story that spans multiple generations. So I'll just jump ahead, fast forward to 2013. Well, in 20, when was it? In 2000, when did I migrate to this country? I think it was 1996, somewhere around there. But anyhow, we eventually moved and was here with my parents for a brief while. And then my dad left. My parents got divorced, was living with my dad, living with my mom, actually. And then a few years later, found out exactly in 2013, found out that he never stopped, that they were several younger cousins that this also happened to. And in 2013, I just developed this, what you would call righteous anger, and figured, somebody got to do something about this, because a couple of years prior to that, I was having a break, had a huge argument with my mother, because as you can imagine, it made or relationship a little bit, volatile, because
Yeah.
I love my mom dearly, but I want again, I didn't know this was her story, but throughout the years when I kept trying to talk to her about it and to let her know that this was really bothering me, and whatever, she would just constantly hit me with forgive, forget, and move on, and whatever the case is. So when I threatened to start talking, and whatever the case is, she wrote a letter one day, pushed it under my door. Again, I was way in my 30s at this point, and that's how I found out that this happened to her too. So fast forward a couple years later, when I found out about my younger cousins, I was like, enough. So with the help of my brother and his support, one of my brothers, he did some research, found out that there's no statute of limitation in Jamaica. I flew back there with my brother by my side, and I pressed charges. And long and short, case went on for 3.5 years. And at the end of the 3.5 years, he was, quote unquote, found guilty. They sent him home to serve some time, because at that time he was 80 something years old, which I simply didn't care. But it
Yeah.
was during that process, when I decided to take him to court, then all hell broke loose, because I heard all cousins were calling me, and I'm talking about older cousins, my aunts. Now I was hearing all of who, and still today, we don't know there was a reset. So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
You froze real quick. You said we don't know everything.
I don't know everyone to date, but during the court process, and even as last week, I was finding out about other cousins still, and the count is over 12 by now. And so, yeah, this one man did all of this to the family, and it was hushed. And so,
Yeah.
why do I do this work? That's why.
Whew. That was a lot. That was a lot. But I
Not
understand,
even the
because
half.
I feel like every family probably has one of those people, because I definitely
Mhm,
do. And
mhm,
it was my stepdad. And one of the things that, it's my grandmother was very protective of me my whole life.
mhm,
I couldn't spend the night over friends' houses. I was at home. My best friend,
mhm.
she was like, she can come stay over our house, but you can't go over her house. But of course, she let me go over my mom's house. That should be the safe spot,
Should be.
and it's
Mhm,
not. And then, later on, I started hearing about other people that have been violated who still haven't publicly talked about it. But my
yeah.
grandmother ended up telling me about other family members who had been violated by him. And then I've had some cousins who said it. And what's crazy is that most people don't feel safe talking about it until
Right.
one person talks about it. Now, now the floodgates open. So when we see these celebrities who are having these charges and folks are like, why is everybody coming out the woodworks now? I'm like, I understand why. Because you don't feel safe talking. If you've said something to one person and they didn't give you the proper response,
Yeah.
didn't make you feel safe to talk about it, then you don't talk about it. You shut it down until somebody else opens up and you feel free to open up again. And so
Right.
I wasn't surprised with what I saw with Bill Cosby, what I saw with R. Kelly, what we see with Diddy.
Hmm.
The stories will continue to come out later on once people feel open enough to talk about it. So I'm glad that you were that person to free your whole family. You know?
Well,
Uh oh.
freed some, freed some. And to that point, that is what trauma does, right? Everyone is not going to get to that place of feeling comfortable to have this conversation because make no mistake about it, it's very hard, right? And the amount of shame that so many of us live with, shame that does not belong to us, but somehow we assume that shame and we carry it and we live with it for decades. And some people will just never feel comfortable to talk about it because for some reason, we just believe that the reflection is on us. It's
Yeah.
something that we did. And society doesn't make it any easier because how many times do you hear, even now with the R. Kelly situation and all
Yeah.
of that, you hear repeatedly the victims keep on getting blamed. Why didn't you talk about it? How were you dressed? This, that, you know,
Always.
and there's nothing that irritates me more, especially when you're talking about childhood sexual abuse, because it's as if we forget that we're talking about just the most horrific things that could happen to a child.
Yeah.
And when you don't have language, you're not safe. You don't feel safe, as in it was my case, my mother's case, my aunt's case, where this man was constantly telling us if we ever open our mouth, we were going to, be unalived and all of that. You don't speak. And you carry that into adulthood because you just continue your life not feeling safe and it continues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that you are you help people reclaim replace the shame or something,
Reassign the shame.
reassign the shame because we shouldn't feel shamed as victims.
No.
We shouldn't feel that shame because we didn't do anything wrong. And I'm 50, so back in the 70s we would have those little bitty jumpers on that was like the one piece that was shorts and the top tied on strings on the shoulder, but nobody's being sexy with it.
Right.
We're just dressed according to the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who finds a 5-year old, a 7-year old, a 10-year old sexy, it's a problem with them. The problem is not with us.
That's perversion of the worst kind.
It
And
is.
these are the things that really irks me. And I still have to stay finding ways and means to, just get myself to a place where, listen, girl, we're not allowing people and people's idiotic statements and their stupidity to trigger you because people are going to be people. But to that point, anyone that finds a child sexually attractive in any way, shape, or form, you're sick. I'm sorry, you're just sick because there's nothing developed on that child, nothing. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's not natural. Like there's
It's
not
definitely
that's
not.
not a natural thing. Yeah. Whew. So today the work that you do looks like what?
Whew. The work that I do today looks like me doing a lot of stuff that I didn't know what to do. Quite honestly, still trying to figure it out. But it looks like me starting a nonprofit, and it looks like me writing, blogging. It looks like me speaking. It looks like me authoring books around the topic. It looks like me hosting a retreat every year for the past, we're going into the ninth year this year. I go home to my home country of Jamaica and we host a retreat for young girls ages 10 through 16 that have been sexually assaulted, and we help to start them on their healing journey. It looks like me sharing my story now because I have reassigned the shame and I couldn't care less who
Hmm.
in my family still gets squeezy and upset and mad at me because that's something that happened and I'm still recovering from. Where when I chose to speak about it, of course, my family did this split, people choosing sides and everything that happened as a result of that. I have to say, while it was one of the scariest and hardest things I've ever done, I've seen and witnessed the intentionality of God and the way He has shifted my life, going from a survivor who was silent for decades and struggling, try to commit on a life myself 3 times, you know, um,
Wow.
been in depression, I mean, in the deepest, darkest places, and struggling with self esteem, the whole works, and not feeling safe. Right. And I have to say, even today, it's an ongoing process where you still get triggered and all of that, but knowing how to self-regulate and whatever. So I've done the work and I'm still doing the work on myself and choosing to help others in the process. So that's
I
all of
love
what
that.
my work look like. Plus
Yeah.
platform speaking, writing, advocating, showing up at court with girls. Yeah.
It's so good that you have this retreat for 10 to 16-year-olds so that they can hopefully break free from the hurt from that and be able to live productive lives in their adulthood, because most people don't have any kind of support after something like this happens, and they hold on to it,
They do.
and they have to deal with it silently in themselves because they don't want to talk to anybody about it,
Yeah.
but it's impacting people's lives forever. So it's so good that you get to impact kids while they're young still.
That is such a blessing. And again, I have to give God thanks for that because on my own, off my own strength, as much as I would want to do everything in my power, because of the traumas that I've lived through, I would you know, much rather pull away and become a recluse, but that's not the space God has me in. And to that point that you made about so many people are still suffering silently, I see it every single day,
Yeah,
even within my family. Family dynamics where you have people that are in their 60s, older than me, much older, and they will not speak about it. They will talk to me occasionally about it. And I'm still having to help folks just think about other methods and ways to approach, because some people are not comfortable with therapy. Some people are just, you know what I mean? So it's being a voice, it's being an ear, lending an ear, and just being there for others.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the things were there any boys in your family that had been molested by this guy, or was all the girls, to your
So about
knowledge?
that. So about that. Not by him, to my knowledge. Not by him. However, uh, since I started speaking out, unfortunately, and this is something I really don't speak on much, and it's crazy that you asked me this because I do believe, and I live by that. I don't share others' story, it's
Hmm.
other people's story to tell. However, unfortunately, since I started speaking out, I have had male relatives disclose that, yeah, they too had the experience, not by my grandmother's husband, but by another family member, another relative, close relative that was in, let's just say, somebody that was highly, highly respected within the family and had a role that he had, and I say he had access to too many of the boys in our family. And but yeah, so we've had it on both sides.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
was wondering if it was a he or she. I was going to ask that next. But oftentimes boys don't feel comfortable talking about it. And especially once they're men, they don't feel comfortable talking about being molested or raped. Some of them don't even see it as that, especially when it's a woman who's doing that to them. But I've talked to too many guys who have
Mhm.
lost their virginity preteen or
Mhm.
teen to 20 something year old women.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you see it on TV. There are some teachers who are having sex and getting pregnant by their students. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, why? And so we see that. I remember Terry Crews came out and talked about having
Mhm.
been sexually assaulted by Harvey Weinstein or whatever his
Yeah.
name is,
Yeah.
and people like tried to make fun of it, and I was like, there's nothing to make fun of. We're still
Right.
talking about sexual assault. We're still talking about a person being violated. And how do you help boys? I know your retreat is for girls, but do you have anything that helps or supports boys or men who've been sexually assaulted?
One of the ways that I do help is again by loaning my ear. And resources that I am currently putting together include helping male survivors as well. It's a very difficult terrain to navigate because I'm not a boy. And
Yes.
to your point, the experience is as difficult and traumatic as it is for females. It's so much harder for young men
Mhm.
because of the fact that, one, again, they are seen as, oh, you're being a big wuss and a baby. Again, I'm Jamaican if
Mhm.
I didn't say that before. So some of my terminologies may be a bit different. But
That's
yeah,
okay.
you're seen as a wuss and a sissy and whatever if you are complaining about a female predator. And culturally, that is something that is so normalized in our society, the West Indian Caribbean society, because yeah, it's like a rite of passage to have older women preying on younger boys.
Wow.
And also, as it relates to same sex abuse, when it comes on to that part of it, it does not matter what the story is, a boy is automatically going to be labeled as a fish, as they call them in Jamaica, which is a homosexual terminology. And they're seen as gay, right? And whether they are or they're not, having this label and the stigma placed on you amid having to deal with everything else that comes with it, you can imagine why they won't say anything. And then
Yeah.
society, again, does not make it any easier,
Yeah.
right? Because if it was a female, you're being, oh, come on, man, you should be happy about this. You should,
Mhm.
and not understanding the psychological effects of what really happens. And
Yeah.
this is one of the most painful parts about doing this work is when you hear from I hear from male survivors, and in their adult years, they're still struggling. They're struggling with their sexuality. They're struggling because they're in relationships, marriages with partners that they've never shared with. And this goes for both sexes, right? So it's literally like you are in a situation where the person don't even know who they're married to, what they're
Mhm.
dealing with. You're curling up at nights with someone that have no idea that this is a part of your story and why you may be reacting the way that you're reacting, right? So it's almost like it's a never ending, not almost like it is a never ending cycle if
Yeah.
you do not get the help. And how do you get the help if there's no safe space for you to go?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I know that you teach about like normalizing body safety conversations early on in life. Like, when do you think parents should have those conversations, and how do they start those conversations with their children to make sure that their kids stay safe?
As soon as your baby start developing words where you can point to body parts and you start saying this is your finger, this is your toe, from then. as earlier as they start formulating language. And yes, you have to do it age appropriately, but one of the things that we struggle with as parents is just the discomfort around having any kind of conversation that has to do with sex, right?
Hmm.
But we have to take into account that if we're not having these difficult conversations with our children, somebody else is going to be having the conversation. They're going to be picking it up
Yep.
somewhere else, right? And so, one of the things that I really stress is as early as possible, as it's simple as, for example, you're teaching the body parts. This is my shoulder. We're singing head, shoulders, knees, and toes. You also have
Hmm.
a penis and a vagina,
Hmm.
right? Say that. Start teaching them the correct terms for
Yeah.
their private parts because, unfortunately, and I can't stress this enough, and these are the things that moves me to tears now when I'm in situations where I am hearing that a child have been trying to disclose abuse for a period, but they're disclosing and using terms like he's touching my cookie. They're not given the correct
Yep.
language. And so the person that's hearing this genuinely don't know what the child is saying. Because if
Hmm.
you're telling the child that, oh, this is called your cookie, this is called in Jamaica, I'll still always go there because again, I'm Jamaican.
Hmm.
In Jamaica, when you're hearing terms like what's one some things I can't say here, but um one of the things is yeah, cookie, vajayjay, just things of that sort. And they never actually say the term. That's one of the things that I do as well. Go into the schools and we actually have school campaigns. And it's so funny to me that as late as 2025, last year, you're talking to a group of kids, and every time I say penis and vagina,
Yeah.
and I'm like, guys, you do have a penis and vagina, right? Girls have a
Hmm.
vagina, boys have a vagina. So it's simplifying it and having the conversation repeatedly. And I'm not talking about every day now, but one of the things that we tend to do is we find a little bit of courage and we have the conversation maybe once, and that's it. No, you have to remind these children over
Yeah.
and over, like you're taking a shower, you're bathing the baby. Say, hey, this is your private part, right? This is one of your private parts. No one is allowed to touch us. Mommy missed giving you a shower. Allowed until you are of age. Then you have
Yep.
to bathe yourself,
Yep.
right? It's just simplifying the conversation, right? I don't care who it is. If it's not mommy, if it's not daddy, and even if daddy touches you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, like the touch is a little bit too long, it's
Hmm.
lingering, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, say something, right?
Yeah.
So it's always having these conversations and always listing the private parts. And I this is something that is very, very critical when we're having these conversations. I tend to find that there's so many family members that even if they do have the conversation, the mouth is never included as a private part.
Wow. I'm glad you said that because I don't think any of us think about that. Although people have been violated there.
Oh, in this day and age, that's the preferential area, the
Yeah.
private part that is violated, whether it's being done to or the children are being asked to,
Yeah.
or the children are being asked to perform the act,
Yeah.
right? So this is something that is very critical, that when we're having these conversations, we have to include the mouth in the private part.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have these conversations and this is happening, your child will not have language to say this is actually happening. And we have to remember that not
Yeah.
having these conversations, predators thrive on confusion. They thrive on the fact that your child don't know this. They
Yeah.
thrive on the fact that you are not having the conversation to say, hey, I don't care who it is, as it could be an list. You develop a safe circle with your children, right? People that you have vetted, people that you believe are trustworthy.
Yeah.
For example, for my children, I have an 11 and a 15-year-old. And as soon as they could talk, these were the conversations that I was having with my children, right? Uncle
Yeah.
such and so, auntie such and so, grandma, dad. That's it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is off limits. And after you get to a certain age, I started teaching my children how to take their showers themselves from an early age to eliminate certain things. But it's also developing that circle with them. These are your safe adults, right?
Yeah.
Ensure that anything happen, if you don't feel comfortable talking to mommy about it, tell someone if in your safe circle. And if by
Yeah.
chance someone in that safe circle decides to now just be unsafe, there's other people to tell. Do not stop telling until someone listens,
Yeah.
right? And again, we have to go through the entire list. No one is exempt. It could be a teacher, a preacher, a
Hmm.
speaker. It does not matter. Aunt, uncle, the neighbor. We tend to talk about stranger danger so much, children.
Mm.
When if you look up the statistics, just take the time, 5 minutes, and go to sites like here in the US, rain, darkness to light, any of these sites, and just look at the percentage of children that are violated by either family members, coach. It's always someone they know.
Yeah.
Always.
Because they
And it's
let their
about,
guard down.
yep.
Yep.
And you see it in the news. Coaches
Hmm.
now are being held accountable,
Yeah.
priests, preacher, no one is exempt.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Terrence said it's usually someone that you know that will hurt your child, and it's somebody that they know and trust, until that trust is broken.
For me,
Yeah.
look at that. He went through the entire family. It was
Hmm.
someone we all know and loved.
Yeah.
Someone I regarded as granddad because that was the only grandfather I knew.
Yeah.
He was the only dad my mother knew. So
Mhm.
it's always someone that's close.
And I think it's also important to tell kids like how to say no to an adult, right? Because when you're raised, and I know for sure in Jamaica you don't talk back to adults, right? You have some folks out here who might try it, but
Out.
but but we have to teach our kids what to say. For example, if somebody's trying to bathe them and they're like, oh, I can handle this myself,
Yeah.
I feel most comfortable showering by myself. My mom has taught me how to do this,
Yeah.
and I can do it. So that they don't use that as an opportunity or as an excuse to see them naked. I remember, man, my stepdad, I had chicken pox in the fourth grade, and he was the one like prior to that. I remember when I was younger, when my mom and him first got together, my mom had other boyfriends who just didn't want me around, and so now she has this one that doesn't mind me being around. I'm like, okay, she had one boyfriend that was, we were good. He didn't try anything, and he
Yeah.
was, just fatherly. But this other guy, so he would pick me up between the legs, like with his arm between the legs. And I was like, so weird and it's so uncomfortable. Like, why would he do that? But I wasn't gonna argue about it because he's
Yeah.
showing me attention, and all the other boyfriends just didn't want me around.
Yeah.
And then he starts molesting me, and then when I was in fourth grade, I got chicken pox. He's the one putting calamine lotion all over me. So now I'm standing there in my panties in my grandma's room, and he's the one putting the calamine lotion all over me. My mom is there, my grandma's there. Why is he the one putting the calamine lotion all over me? It doesn't need to be that. But I also didn't have and I already had breasts at fourth grade.
So he was
So
grooming you. He was
yeah,
grooming you. He
yeah,
was grooming your mother and your grandmother right
yeah,
in front of their faces.
yeah,
And that is what they do. That is what they do. And this is why education is so important because with no judgment, I cannot understand even at this grand old age of mine why certain things, a lot of women especially, just condone and never question. And I don't know if it, honestly, I don't know. It could be because of my experience, but something like that would have set off an alarm for me. There's no way
Yeah.
you're not her dad, and even her dad should not be doing certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would set off an alarm for me.
Yeah.
I would start asking questions. And it sounds as if you weren't asked the questions, like so
Mm-hmm.
many of us weren't asked the questions. But that's one of the things, even that, just simply having conversations with your child. Is anybody making you uncomfortable? The truth of the matter is, there's a lot of, dare I say, parents and grandparents that will not ask the question because they don't want to know the answer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you alluded to it earlier. Boundaries. We have to establish boundaries with our children. The way we were brought up, again, I'm brought up in the islands, to your point, you better be seen and not heard. You can't speak back. You can't. There are so many limits that were placed on you because you were a child, that it's
Mm-hmm.
no wonder so many, this happened to so many of us. And it's not just in the islands, it's right across the board because of the way we were raised. This
Yeah.
is something that we have to become knowledgeable about and start to break that pattern. Because as for me, I tell my boys all the time, I don't care who it is. If you have something to say it, right? And that is a boundary around, I am responsible for this body, this space. So if you touch me in any kind of way, I am going to say something. If you say something unkind to me, I am going to say something. If you're gifting me anything, I am going to say something. Tell my mom, tell my dad, hey, such and such keeps giving me candy, right? And it's just, it's literally having these conversations in a safe way to not let a child feel weirded out by it, but by simply saying things like, hey, if Mr. or uncle or whatever is touching you, or he's constantly giving you candy and he's constantly giving you money and he's doing these things, we should question that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just let mommy know and we can tackle that together.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, we don't say anything at all. Or another way parents tend to talk about stuff and think we're having the conversation is we'll say something around, along the lines of, nobody can touch my kid because my kid is going to tell me, and then XYZ, I'm going to do this, that, and the third. The truth of the matter is, no, your child is not going to tell you anything because, one, you never even had the conversation with the child.
Mm-hmm.
You just saying it out in the open, that's not
Yeah.
you having the conversation. Two, one of the things that we don't think about is that the way our children see us, if you continue to threaten violence and to do all of this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this. If your child discloses, what do you think is going to happen? Your child is not going to say anything
Yeah.
because not only are they afraid, but they love you and they don't want to see hurt or harm come to you. So if I
Mm-hmm.
know that Mr. Whoever is touching me in an appropriate way, I'm not telling mommy because mommy is going to lose the plot. She's going to
Mm-hmm.
kill somebody and she's going to end up in prison, and I'm losing my mommy too.
Yeah.
So we have to be mindful of how we approach these topics. And before I forget, I want to acknowledge the grooming process. And that is exactly what was happening to you. And this is one of the things that predators know what they're doing. They are master manipulators. Okay. And in the case of my grandmother's husband, he went in search of a woman with children that he could have access to. This
Wow.
is why you have teachers, and you have so many teachers that are predators. You have coaches that are predators. These people, and I'm not saying just men, men and women, they position themselves in places and spaces that they have access to your children, including dating, including dating. You
Mm-hmm.
think this man is in love with you, and you're here trying to even shun your kids from saying something because you don't want to break up your relationship. The man was never there for you. The
Yeah.
woman was never there for you. They are with you only because they wanted access to your children.
Yeah.
And let me say, this does not apply to everyone. The
Yeah.
point is, have the conversation, pay
Hmm.
keen attention to what's happening to your children. If
Yeah.
your children start acting weird all of a sudden. And another thing I have to stress, we have a tendency to force our children to show affection. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. If the child does not want to hug or sit on uncle's whoever lap, if the child don't feel like kissing grandpa or grandma, the child has feelings too.
Hmm.
Listen, there is a reason. Yes, do we know that we have some children that, they just, their personality is,
Hmm.
crazy, for lack of, it's not crazy, but they're just
Hmm.
more sensitive and behave a different way. Yes, we do have those children. However, if your child was never like that, and all of a sudden they don't feel comfortable, they're telling you, I don't want to be left over the sitter. I don't want to be left with this person. Even if they're non-communal, if you're
Yeah.
dropping your baby off somewhere and that baby is hollering, you have to pay attention to the cues. Sometimes the child just wants you, other times it's because things are happening to that baby.
Yep.
Another thing, for those of us that have children that are challenged in any way, shape, or form on the spectrum, they're nonverbal, whatever the case is, please pay attention to your babies because predators abuse children that are nonverbal and, dare I say, challenged at such high, it's alarming rates because, again, they feel as if they can't communicate, right? They can't tell you what's happening,
Hmm.
right? So there's so many things for us. We could be here for hours on end
Yeah.
talking about
I
all the different
know.
ways, the signs. But the reason why we're having this conversation is to stress the fact that the conversations need to be had. And we don't take away the discomfort because the truth of the matter is there's a lot of other things we feel uncomfortable about. It's not, I don't love having this conversation either, but it
Hmm.
needs to be had. Same thing applies.
And parents just have to make the time because people are busy and they're working and all this stuff, but you have to take the time. And I'm gonna set aside time to have these conversations with my kids, regardless
Yeah.
of how old they are. And especially if somebody else is taking care of them while you're working. You
And it's
need
never
to
too
have,
late.
yeah,
It's never too late as
yeah,
long as that child is still, whether the child is under your care or not, it's
yeah,
your child.
yeah.
Have the conversation with the child.
And one thing that kids' behaviors will change.
Mhm.
And you think that, oh, they're just acting up, oh, they just became a teenager and now they're acting up. No, there's nothing that in their body clock that is like, oh, at 13 you should start acting like this, or at 12. No, something might be happening in that kid's life, the reason why their behavior is changing. And what's crazy, my stepdad, who was molesting me, would always be like, he would tell my mom, your daughter gonna make you a grandma. And it's like my behavior became this way because I've already been violated. So now what?
And
You
not
know,
only that, they tend to do that a lot to deflect any kind of eyes looking at them.
yeah.
They will call you names. They will create these stories and these scenarios. I can't forget having conversations with my mom and my aunt. And to be honest, that's how this story actually got the ball rolling for me some years ago because I went all the way to England one year, and my little cousin was having a conversation with me one night late, and she goes, um I was told auntie, she called my mom's name, don't like, and she mentioned her granddad's name. She hates him. And is it because he boxed her, like slapped her in the face when she was 17? The story behind that was my mom My mom was heading home from school one afternoon, and one of the neighborhood boys, she was walking alongside, and this man saw her walking with this young man and flew off the handle and slapped my mom across the face so hard in front of everybody, in front of this young man, right? And it
Wow.
embarrassed my mom so much. Unbeknownst to everybody, this man was trying to protect his belongings, right? He got in a rage because she was talking to somebody else, and
Mm-hmm.
she was still in the house at that age. He was still doing whatever. So he flew off the handle, did whatever. The rest of the family perceived it at now that my mom disliked him that much because of what he did. But the truth of the matter is, my mom had deep seated resentment towards him because of what he had been doing from she was 6.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the narrative. And she said that to me. And I kept saying to her, no, honey, no, sweetie, that's not why mom doesn't like him. And she kept pressing. I said, leave it alone. She kept pressing because this is his actual granddaughter. And so I finally said to her, you want to know the truth? I'll tell you. Mom doesn't like him because of things he used to do to her when she was a child. And she goes, what does that mean? And that's when I said, leave it alone. Of course, it never stopped there. So that's when the ball started because
Yeah.
I had just gotten to the place, Kaleesha, where all of the different stories, all of the different, I just got sick of it. And this was way before I found out about my younger cousin. So even I knew, looking back now in hindsight, there was eventually going to be a breaking point for me. There was. And what I couldn't do for myself, I thank God that He orchestrated it in such a way that it's always, whenever I spoke out in the past, it was always after I realized something was happening to someone else. For example,
Yeah.
my sister. When I caught him with her at 3, I was 13. She's exactly 10 years my junior. And even though he had started raping me from ages 11 up until that point, I never spoke again because my aunt and my mom knew. They still left me there. And they never bothered to ask me if he was doing this. So I just thought they didn't care. So I can't do anything about it. That is my fate. But when I realized he was doing this, and it's things that my baby sister was doing at the time, for example, she had loads of cash. Where the heck did you get money from? You're 3. I didn't give it to you. So where did you get it?
Wow.
And I started asking the questions. And the moment she called his name, I knew. So there's a whole backstory. I'll save you all the details there. But that forced me to speak again. I went and I told my aunt, and my aunt took my sister and myself, took us to my grandmother's sister's house. They called my mom here in the US. They told my mom. In total, there were 7 women that knew: my mother, her 2 sisters, and 4 of my grandmother's sisters. And even then, of these women, nobody decided to tell my grandmother what was happening, right? They removed us from the home for what seemed like a week because, truth be told, they split my sister and I up, sent me to one aunt, grand aunt, and I also have sickle cell anemia. So those are my 2 crosses that I bear. And because of the stress of it all, when I went to my grandmother's, my great grandmother's house, rather, I had a crisis. And she literally looked at me and said, I don't want you dying on me, so you have to go back. She sent me back to the house. And because I was back there, my sister came back and nobody spoke about it again. No one told my grandmother. We were just left in the situation, my sister and I.
Wow.
But thanks be to God, I don't know how I knew. I just knew that I didn't want my sister experiencing the depth of what I was experiencing. So I knew even at 13 that I had to do everything in my power to shield her. So every night, Kaleesha, it was a battle because I had to find ways and places and spaces to hide my baby sister just to avoid her being raped.
Yeah.
So yeah. But that's
We,
another a whole nother part of the story where
yeah,
you are abandoned, rejected, neglected by all the adults. So that was another part of the trauma that I had to be healing.
yeah. And
So
it may be inconvenient,
hmm,
but you got to deal with it. Like to hear your great grandmother or great great aunt saying, like, I don't want you dying on me. It's inconvenient, but protect the baby. Okay? Protect the babies from harm. It's inconvenient to have, taking care of other kids, and maybe you've raised your own kids already, and
right, right.
be inconvenienced to save a baby's life. Because as you said, you try to take yours years after that.
Oh, several times.
And so if we love our kids, we got to do everything in our power to protect them. Yes, it may be inconvenient. Yes, you may not live the luxurious lifestyle. You may not be able to go out and date or party or whatever, but you got to do whatever you can to protect your kids.
We do.
Period.
We do.
Many parents maybe who are listening may be survivors themselves. What is something you want them to hear, so that they can help heal themselves?
One of the things that I need survivors to hear and to know, not just hear it, this was not your fault. Whatever was done to you was not your fault. One of the ways I had to start this journey is after sitting down one evening and I started assessing everything that happened throughout my life. And I'm realizing, wait a second, I was 5 years old when this man first violated me. I never asked him to do that. And even if I asked, I was 5. He's a grown ass man.
Hmm.
So there's absolutely no blame, nor should there be any shame around that. And this is where the tagline again for Journey to Free is reassign the shame and speak, because we tend to hold on to all of this as if we did something wrong. And maybe we were told that, because make no mistake, there's a lot of us that even when we disclosed, we were turned around and blamed for it. Not the adult, not the person that did the harm, but
Yeah.
the child. And we take that in and we carry that for years. So, if nothing else from this conversation, please understand that nothing, that anything at all that happened to you that should not have happened, especially as a child, it was not your fault. It was not your fault. And sitting with all of that on the inside of you, believe me when I tell you, it's not just the suffering, that the mental suffering and the torment. We're doing such damage to our bodies, because whatever sits on the inside of us and cannot come out, we cannot give it voice. It's wreaking havoc on the inside of us. And I know what I'm talking about. I'm in my 40s. I've lived through a heart attack. When I tell you, God has been good, right? And all of this was because of stress. Yes, I did say I have a chronic illness, but I know the majority of what I had to endure up until this point was all because of the trauma that I carried within my body. So if you're listening to me, please, I know we don't like to think about it. I know one of the things we tend to do is keep ourselves busy, because stillness, we dread stillness because the thoughts, the memories are coming back and ruminating. But we have to sit with it long enough to address and accept this happened. Acknowledge it, accept it, say it out. If you can't say it this way, write it out. Grab your phone, record you saying it, because anything that does not come up and out of your body lives as it's trapped within, and it's causing Well, we all know that, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
anger, whether it's the constant the frustration, we're just unhappy, we're miserable. No matter how much we dress it up, we mask it all day, every day, pretending all is well. And then at nights when the masks come off and we're literally dying, we don't know ourselves because we lost our identity and we've been living in survival mode from childhood, from we
Yeah.
were young children. We don't have to continue to live like this. We really don't. So if we can get to that place that if you don't have a person that's in your closest circle that you feel safe enough to talk to, there are resources out here. There are people out there. Shoot, call me up.
Yeah.
I'll have the conversation. Tell me. I won't tell anybody. Tell me. But we have to get to the place where something happened. Something happened. It was not my fault. I don't want to carry this anymore because one of the many ways that I know this comes out and it manifests in our adult years is even in our parenting. It's
Yep.
coming up in our relationships. It comes out, trust me, in varying ways. So
Hmm.
until we get to that place where we're just like, okay, enough. I don't want to do this anymore. And the other thing is, bear in mind, a perpetrator never, hardly ever have one victim. So the longer we take to talk, the
Yeah.
longer we take to disclose, we're leaving other children at the
Yeah.
hands of it. And trust me, if they don't get help, they never stop. It doesn't matter how old they get, they
Yeah.
never stop because it's a sickness.
Hmm.
And if you're not getting cured or healed or actively trying to stop this, it doesn't. So, no matter how much we try to tell ourselves, like so many of the women in my family, I don't know how they got to the place of this was comfortable enough for them to go to bed and sleep at night, knowing and leaving the kids. And again, I am not blaming anybody, but the truth is, at this age,
Yeah.
I'm realizing, my God, how?
Yeah.
How did this happen for so many years? How was it that so many of you turned a blind eye? Because you didn't want shame on the family, because you didn't want the man to leave, because he was helping you to feed the kid, because, and then some of us have the audacity to then wonder why we have a fractured relationship with our adult children.
Yeah.
They never felt safe. You never created a safe, you never even acknowledge them to
Hmm.
say, listen, I know that things happened to you when you were children. I wasn't brave enough to do anything about it now, but I see that you're struggling. And I want to acknowledge that and I was wrong. No, you don't hear that.
Yeah. And so many times because parents have been trained to have this type of mindset where, as you said, like a kid needs to stay in a kid's place, or they don't give you the freedom to just speak freely to them. Then when things like this come up, you don't feel safe talking to them.
Right.
You don't have that open communication. And that wasn't the situation with my grandmother. We had open communication, but I had talked to my mom about it first
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't do anything. And so I'm not repeating it to my grandmother, but when my mom saw me in the bathtub crying and bathing myself, and we only had one bathroom, so she had to use the bathroom. So she came in while I'm bathing and crying and just scrubbing my skin. She's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, I don't want to talk about. I'm not saying anything. So finally, I do tell her what happened. I remember hearing her arguing with him about it. He said, "She lying. She just trying to get back to your mom's house." So my mom and my grandma decided for themselves that if I was telling the truth, I would tell my grandma. And I was never a person to lie about anything. I never had to lie. We had open communication. I never had to lie. So why would I lie about that? So for those parents who may think that their kid lies or their kid may be lying, what would you say to those parents?
That's one of the most damning things you can do to a child. Let's err on the side of caution, right? If your child discloses, believe the child, because it's very rare. I don't, children are, they're great imaginators, right? As young. Yeah, they have active imaginations. They do all of these little things. Kaleesha, making up the details, the sorted details as something as that, that is not something that actively pops up in a child's mind.
Yeah.
There is no way a child is going to sit and literally put together all of this that's happening, especially if you see the child crying. They're scrubbing their skin. Again, they don't want to be around this person.
Hmm.
They're telling you without telling you that something is wrong. But if that child have the courage to open their mouth and to say, this is happening, believe me when I tell you, it's the worst thing, worst possible thing you could do to your child is by telling them that you don't believe them.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you're putting that additional nail in that child's coffin,
Yeah.
because it's very rare that there's a comeback from that.
Yeah.
Now they go through the world not trusting anybody, because if I couldn't trust this bastard, right? And now I came to you as a mother, as a father, the person that should be loving and protecting me and shielding me. But the message that you're sending is that this person matters more to you than me, your child, the child that you carried. And
Hmm.
I know it's not as easy and cut and dry, because, yeah, some of us have kids that we didn't want, right? That's a whole nother story for another day.
It is.
However, you went through the process of carrying a child for however many months you carried that child. It is your responsibility to look out for this child, to protect the child as best as you possibly can. And unless your life is in danger as well, which there's still workarounds for that, there's really no excuse for you to do this to a child.
Hmm.
God entrusted you with that child. It is your responsibility and your obligation to protect that little one. I don't care if they're 6 months, 6 years, 16 years old. It's still your responsibility to look out for that child.
Yeah.
And yes, some of us have been abused before. And this is the part that really complicates things for me. And I still can't wrap my mind around it, because unfortunately, you have people that will tell you things like, oh, it happened to me. It wasn't that bad. You need help. I'm going to
Yeah.
say it. You need psychological help,
Yeah.
because you should know that, yes, it was that bad. Someone violated you that should not have violated you.
Yeah.
Right. And there are so many consequences that as you get older, and even in people that say stuff like that, you see their behaviors there, you know that something is wrong there, so you're only
Yeah.
telling yourself that to make yourself feel good,
Yeah.
because that's a lie from the pit of hell.
Yeah.
Right. But the bottom line is, if you have had the experience, or even if you haven't had the experience, please, I am begging you, if a child discloses, even if you don't know how to handle, you don't know what to do, you have these things in your hands every single day. Research resources. There are hotlines everywhere that you can call anonymously.
Hmm.
Try your best to take yourself and the child out of the situation before you even go hammering at this person, because when they are exposed, you will see sides to them that you would have never expected,
Yeah.
right? So, safety first, always. Protect your child and protect yourself. But please, for God's sake, don't sit there and do nothing, because you're literally killing that child's hope. You're killing the child's future. You're just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. My mom died in 91. I didn't forgive her until 2019
Ooh.
for stuff that happened in my life,
Your
and
grandmother, did she ever speak out about it when after you disclosed?
so she didn't tell me anything about it at that time. But then there end up being these commercials on TV, like if anybody's touching you, say something.
Mm.
And I would always be embarrassed when those commercials would come on. And I would like just try to leave the room. And, I didn't want to. And then so she would ask me, anybody ever touched you? And I'm like, no,
Mm.
but I just didn't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
That was years later, and it wasn't before my grandma died. I did have the conversation with her, and I told her about it, and that's when she told me that, oh, your mom has said, well, if Kaleesha is telling the truth, she would tell you. I said, I never was a liar though. Like I never was a liar. There was one time I was accused of lying. They said I cut my hair, and I didn't even lie about that. But they were threatening to whoop me if I didn't say I cut my hair. I was like, it fell out. I had a perm. My hair fell out. They were like, you cut it. I didn't cut it. Like I never was a liar. Like why would you think that? But
Anything to avoid having the conversation and taking
yeah,
accountability. That's
yeah,
what it was. Yeah.
yeah. And it's probably some feeling of I put my kid in this situation. I put my daughter or my
See,
granddaughter
I
in this
struggle with
situation.
that,
Huh?
Kaleesha. I do know there's a lot of guilt to go around from the victim's perspective, the parent perspective. And I get that to an extent. Because if you're truly feeling some type of way, the action should be to protect the child,
Yeah.
right? You should feel that guilty enough. I did put my child in this situation, and it's something I cannot undo, right? Because we have no control over what the next person is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
However, if and when something is done, you actually make that situation worse by not believing the child, by not seeking help for the child, for not even having a conversation with the child. And in instances like that, it's right there in those experiences, those moments that a survivor will tell you, I started to die internally.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, the act itself was devastating, yes. But as a child, if something was done and now you turn to that person that you trust the most, and that person tells you that you're lying, it kills something in you.
Yeah.
It really does. And not for all of us, but for the most of us,
Yeah.
it damages something, and oftentimes it's unrepairable. And oftentimes that thing is trust.
Yeah.
I can't trust anybody after this.
Yeah.
The safety, what safety? I don't feel safe anymore. There is so many things that happens in those instances.
Yeah. And even if the parents don't say, I think you're lying, if they don't do anything, if you don't see them do
You're
anything,
sending the
they
same
never
message.
come back to have a conversation with you about it, it's just as bad as saying, I don't believe you,
And it
and
sends the message that they don't care. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. And you said something about that earlier about love. Oh, it took me a long time to try to dissect what the heck does that mean? Because you cannot, with one breath, say you love someone and you subject your children to this. Make it
yeah,
make sense.
yeah,
Because love, no matter what, you're going to do whatever it takes to protect that child.
yeah,
Again, you couldn't stop it from happening, but just to hug that child, to hold them, to let them know, even if you're not an affectionate person like
hmm,
my family, but just acknowledging that I hear you and I see this. Do you know how much that does to a child? Somebody believes me.
yeah,
Someone, I'm not in this by myself. I can get help, right? And even that's another thing. We have to approach things with honesty. Baby, I don't know what to do in this moment, but I'm going to seek some help. Just know that I'm here with you. Be honest about it. If you
Yeah.
don't know, you don't know. And if you don't know how to have this, is to start breaching the conversation. Trust me, they're books. Hey, grab a copy of My Body
Please
Belongs to
tell
Me.
folks about the books that you've written.
So I've written a couple children's book that pretty much covers this message and makes it really easy and an engaging way to have the conversation with the children, right? So there's a boy and a girl version to that book behind me called My Body Belongs to Me. um, there's that, and that's for ages 5 through 7. Of course, there's resources listed in the back. There's conversations, just simple things that you can say to your children. It's written in such a rhythmic way to really not only send the message, but for them to sing these little songs in here. Because my sons and I wrote a jingle that goes with the book. My body is my body belongs to me. Yeah, so
I love
we have a
it.
jingle that goes with the book, and that's for ages. You can start reading the book from as early as 2, 3, but just be prepared. It's more for ages 5 through 7, right?
Okay.
To just read through. And it's very simplistic and age appropriate. And then in the back, you have questions. I made it very simple. Ask the children these questions. Ask them questions to let them tell you what they gained from the book. And then for older children from ages through 8 through 12, my son co authored this one called Children Have Rights Too. By the way, y'all don't go purchase it on Amazon. Amazon, purchase it from my website, please, if you're
Yep.
going to get the book, because Amazon
It-
terminated my account and still have my book selling on their platform. Long story. Yeah,
Wow.
girl, over 4 years. And they still have my main sellers up there. But yeah, this one is done in a uh, it's like a comic book, so to speak, right? So I'll just do a quick flip through. And then in the back, as I said, I'll use this one. I That's the girl and boy version that's behind me. But there's simple questions in here and statements that you practice with your children to say out loud. I don't know if you can see that,
Yep.
but it simply says, I am going to tell. Rehearse with them, no, by using a soft tone, then a louder tone. It basically walks you through all of that. And we offer resources of places that you can call, reach out to if your child does disclose.
And what's your website?
It's journey number two, just like it is on the screen.
Okay.
Journey number two, free publishing. Journey to Free is the nonprofit. Journey to Free Publishing is the sister arm of Journey to Free. There we have resources.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. But this conversation, Kaleesha, oh my God. If nothing else, I can't stress that enough about the conversations we need to have with our children. We're hearing it too much, way too much. And even sitting here, well, we're not sitting with you, but sitting with you,
Hmm.
to come on and to hear you say you too.
Hmm.
I have been at this from 2017, and I'm sad to report I hear this more than I hear, oh no, that happened to you. You know, it's often, oh, me too.
Yeah. In the business community that we are in, when you said this is what I do, I immediately like inbox you like, hey,
You
we need to
did.
talk
You did.
because people are not having these conversations. And that's why it keeps continuing. Because if we can empower parents with the strategies that you're providing, now they know how to have those conversations. Now they know how to protect their kids. Now they know how to help their kids protect themselves. That's huge. When you just that little bit in the back of the book where you said, I'm going to tell.
I
Start off softly, get louder.
Can
I'm
I
going to tell.
add? Can I
Yeah.
add real quick? I don't want to forget this, and this is so key as well. One of the reasons why we need to have these conversations with our children, because it's not just children we need to protect our children from. We need to protect our children from other children,
Yeah.
because this is happening at an alarming rate where you have peer and peer abuse as early as kindergarten. Because I'll tell you this much: once a child is exposed, you can't unexpose them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You don't know what's happening in someone else's home.
Yeah. And
And
when
you're right,
one kid has been molested, that's when they go and they do the same thing to somebody else.
to other children.
Yeah.
So even in that, when I tell you, when I started this work, the things that I started to uncover, to learn, to discover, to things that was shared and things that I was privy to, Kaleesha, let's just say I still at times curl up at nights and cry, but for very different reasons. Very different reasons. For example, one of our girls, she had her case before the court for 14 years and they just threw out the case. And when I tell you she is spiraling right now, 14 years. And they basically held her accountable after all of that.
How?
Yeah. So, and this was a peer and peer as well, right? And even in those settings, because in full transparency, when I started doing this work and when I started speaking, and for the longest, honestly, I thought my experience was unique to me. Imagine my surprise, how many years later that it's every other person. And then again, as I said, it's being in the classrooms and hearing children say, me too, this is happening, whether it's by an adult or it's by another child. And what I have come to find out too, incest, incest runs rampart in our communities. But again, we're not having conversations about that, right? The amount of victims and survivors that I work with, where, so these are the reasons why we need to have the conversations,
Yeah.
because you, as a parent, may be having this conversation and you're having empowering your child to have the conversation with you about the other parent.
And that's that has to be hard.
It is hard,
Yeah.
but you have to prepare your mind. What are you going to do? And leaving the child alone to fend for themselves is not the answer. So guard them in a way that at least empower them with the basic conversation. I know we as adults, because again, everything was so taboo around sex, the way we were brought up, we do have discomfort around having this conversation. Imagine, I have to have this conversation with my sons. It's not comfortable, but my son co wrote this book with me. My sons go every year with me to the retreat in Jamaica. Now, my sons could have this interview with you simply because I've been having the conversation. It
So good.
was not easy. It's trial and error. It's repetitive. It's the reminder that you do have boundaries. And it's not just that you shouldn't, no one should touch you, but it's also informing them you're not allowed to touch anyone either. That's a boundary that you need to establish with your children as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't go touching anyone else, inappropriately, of course.
Yeah.
So, even that in the book, we talk about safe touch and unsafe touch, right? So, yeah, it's hard
Um,
work.
yeah.
It's hard work. But if we say we love our children, this is a part of the responsibility.
Yeah.
Nothing about parenting is easy.
Yeah.
Neither is this.
If you do it right, it's going to be hard work. You should be exhausted. And that comes with, I was thinking about how kids show everything through their behavior.
Mhm.
But if you're not spending the time to see what their normal behavior is like,
Right.
you can't see when their behavior changes. You just notice when it's an outburst against you, or you should be studying your kids so well that you know, wait, they're doing something a little different. What's happening here? You know?
Including isolations, right?
Yeah.
Isolation is a big one, especially
And
now with our technology and the exposure that they have now to everything. There
yep.
is no leaving, closing your door. There is no you just having a device and mommy don't have access to it when you go to bed. And don't get me wrong, kids, because they have their peers in their ear, they'll find ways and means to go around you.
Hmm.
Research that too. If my
Yep.
son wipes the phone, how can I get some information? How could I find some of the stuff?
Yep.
Right. And if it gets to the point that you feel as if you're losing grounds that way, you are the parent. Take the damn things
Yep.
because it's about safety. And let's not forget online safety. So, right across the board, we need to be having the conversation from within our homes. What happens when they go outside the home? What happens when they're on these devices that they're scrolling with? We have to have a conversation.
All the time. And we need to normalize having those conversations.
And
You
it
know,
has to be ongoing.
and we'll feel uncomfortable in the beginning. They may feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but if you
Oh, yeah.
start to make it part of your normal practice, you get used to it. It won't always be uncomfortable. You
Yeah.
know, have the conversation. It's going to be more uncomfortable if you don't have the conversation and something happens to your baby.
That part. That part.
Yeah. So tell folks where to find you, where to connect with you. I have journeytofreepublishing.com for your books. Any other, are you on social media?
I am.
And you got a podcast you'll be starting soon?
Yeah, about that. About that. I am launching a podcast called Awaken to Purpose. It should be launching this month. I should. I'm working through some things, right?
Yeah.
But to find me on social media, I have to preface this by saying I am just relaunching and getting back into the swing of things because of just challenges I had before, including health challenges and other issues, as I mentioned, alluded to with Amazon and all of these things. So I am just getting back in the swing of things, of having is presence on social media. Never stopped doing the work in the background with everything else that I was doing, but on social media. So on Facebook, I am on Facebook. It's Larissa Rhone. I just started using TikTok. So I'm over there as Larissa Rhone. On Instagram as well. I think that's Rizzy Roan, if I'm not mistaken. And I do have to make sure everything is cohesive on all my platforms. But yeah, I'm on a few things. And I have on journeytofree.com as that's a nonprofit website. However, I blog, I do write a lot, and I tend to put stuff out there outside of my books and stuff like that. So yeah,
And is there a
just
link to
Google
donate if
me.
people want
Some
to donate? If people want to donate to like the retreats and stuff like that, is that on that? Is that at Journey to Free?
Yes, it is. There's a donate button on journeytofree.com. And please, it's journey number two, free. Journeytofree.com. And please donate because it's one of the things that we have ongoing year round. Many of the girls that comes to us, unfortunately, they were impregnated by their abusers, and so we also have a baby drive that is continual. We have back to school programs that we help to support these girls as they transition back into school because they kick them out in Jamaica when they're pregnant, and so
Mm.
we help them. So it's constant. The work is never ending, and yeah, sometimes the girls need help in varying ways because they're from extremely poor backgrounds. And so I do have a ongoing WhatsApp chat where we check in multiple times for the week, and the families, the girls are in dire need of various things. So please, donations are always welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for taking this time to talk with me. I appreciate you. I appreciate your transparency. As we were preparing and you were like, listen, I'm open and I talk. I love that because that's how people get to healing. When
Yeah.
we hide and we tell only a bit of the story that people can't relate to, it doesn't help people heal. But you're doing the good work. And I thank you so much for that.
Let me say, Kaleesha, thank you, because the moment you heard me say something, you jumped at the opportunity. And I don't get that a lot. You get people wanting to hear the story, but not wanting to do this for the empowerment of others and for sharing the information. And you immediately ask, would you come on and talk about how we can help our children, how we can have the conversation around our children? I don't get
Hmm.
that often, which is
Yeah.
very sad. So the moment you asked, I said yes,
Yeah.
because the conversations needs to be had.
Yeah.
So thank
And
you.
I had to because it's a story, it's a conversation that everybody needs to have, but
Mm,
specifically Black parents, we typically don't trust people of other races to talk to us about this, and we don't feel safe talking to people of other races. And so
yeah.
I'm like, we have to talk to our people. We have to create those platforms for people to be able to listen to people who look like them, who they may trust just on the strength of the fact that we look like them. And so if anybody is listening, I want everybody to hear it because it affects everybody, people of all races, ages, generations, all of those things. But if it opens your mind to hear somebody who looks like you, who's gone through the same thing that you've gone through, talking to you about their experiences as well, I'm hoping that it opens the door for the conversation even more.
And I'm so happy you mentioned that, because that's one of the reasons. Back in December, I launched Journey to Free here locally, because so many people didn't know about us, know about the work that I'm doing, because I was so focused on Jamaica. And only to find, to your point, so many people, when I come across them or they stumble across my site, it's like, wait, you're here, you're local, you do this work. And what I do find, you're absolutely right, people like us, it doesn't matter how many resources is out there,
Mm-hmm.
especially folks from the West Indian Caribbean community, because we are, and blacks, period. We grew up hearing you don't tell people your business,
Yep.
right? You keep
Yep.
everything is just secrecy, secrecy. Don't share your business. Don't, we don't generally do that. And
Yep.
worse, if you don't look like me, I don't feel comfortable telling you
Yep.
my story, right? So, with that, is why we're now focusing and pivoting and launching not just survivor circles here, but I'm working to figure out how I can build a community online so we could create safe spaces even through these platforms. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're doing that in the works, because I still need spaces that I can talk for my
Yeah.
own well-being,
Yeah.
right? I've been on the journey, but I'm still healing. I'm not healed. I don't know if there's such a thing as being healed, because as you go through, you realize there's a whole lot of other things you have to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
You really do. So it's a continuous cycle, and
It's
I
the
do need
journey.
to, it is a journey, hence Journey
Mm-hmm.
to Free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Well, thank you
yeah.
so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for those who have tuned in. Please subscribe. Please share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Even if they haven't shared their story with you, give it to them. Anybody who has kids needs to have this conversation. They need to be a part of this. They need to hear this. And for sure, reach out, journeytofree.com, journey number two free.com, journey number two free publishing.com to get those books to help
And to
have those.
YouTube.
Huh?
And to YouTube. I just remembered that when you were saying that.
You said in YouTube?
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel, and that's where I'm going to put the podcast. So y'all can
Okay.
subscribe in the meantime.
Yes. Subscribe ahead of time so you can be notified the first time she drops the first video. And thank you all for your time. I love you. and let's go heal. Let's get on this journey to being free.
Have the
Have a good
conversation, y'all.
one.
Thank you, Kaleesha.
You're